Bounty hunter caught a bandit, only to learn he'd just hung his own father. The boots were still warm when he dragged them into town. Not from the sun, not from the ride. From the man inside them. The bounty hunter dismounted beneath the skeletal oak outside Dry Hollow, his horse breathing ragged through flared nostrils, its side streaked with white salt and dried sweat. Behind him, bound in frayed hemp and silence, the bandit stumbled on cracked heels, head bowed, arms pinned tight by rope that bit into his wrists like a lover's last grip. No cries. No pleas. Just the slow, dragging scrape of leather on dust, the same sound that had haunted the hunter's dreams since he was 12. He didn't need to see the face to know. He'd seen those boots before. 10 years ago, on the night the fire took their barn, his father wore them. Blackened at the toes from kicking embers, laces knotted twice because the left one always slipped. The same scuff on the right heel, made when Dad kicked the broken water bucket during the storm. Eli had watched from the window, wrapped in a quilt too thin for December, as his father walked out toward the road with a sack over his shoulder and no goodbye. They said he stole cattle. Said he burned down Miller's store. Said he vanished into the Badlands with blood on his hands. But Eli never believed it. Until now. The townsfolk came slowly, first the baker, wiping flour on his apron, then the sheriff, his badge dull with rust, then the children, peeking from behind barrels, eyes wide like startled deer. A woman sobbed quietly near the saloon door. "That's him," she whispered. "Red Rock Joe. Robbed the church last week. Took the offering, and the preacher's Bible." Eli didn't answer. He just pulled the prisoner closer, fingers trembling against the rough hemp. The man didn't resist. Didn't even lift his head. But as the wind curled through the empty street, carrying the scent of wood smoke and sour whiskey, Eli caught it, the faintest trace of pipe tobacco. Not the cheap stuff sold in saloons. The kind his father rolled himself. Dark, bitter, laced with cloves. He remembered that smell. Remembered how it clung to his mother's shawl after long nights of prayer. The crowd murmured. Someone spat. Another laughed, sharp, brittle, like dry bone snapping. "Looks like justice finally caught up," the sheriff said, stepping forward. "You bagged the devil himself, boy." Eli didn't correct him. He hadn't called himself a boy since he was 16. He'd been hunting this man for 6 months. Followed rumors from Texas to Montana, tracked footprints through snow and sand, paid 3 men in gold just to hear whispers of an outlaw who never spoke, never drank, never looked anyone in the eye. A ghost with boots that never changed. And now here he was. Right in front of him. Alive. Breathing. Still wearing the damn boots. The sheriff nodded to the carpenter, who'd already rigged the gallows from railroad ties and rope scavenged from the abandoned mine. It stood crooked, swaying slightly in the breeze, a mockery of justice, built fast, meant to be final. Eli untied the prisoner's hands. No resistance. No struggle. Just a slow, heavy exhale, like a man who'd been waiting for this moment all his life. Then, as the noose was lowered, Eli reached out. Not to tighten it. Not to shove him onto the trapdoor. But to brush the dust from the man's chin. And there it was. A scar. Thin. White. Curved like a half-moon. Right below the ear. His father had it. From the axe accident. When Eli was 7. When his dad chopped too fast, too tired, too hungry, trying to split firewood for the sickroom where his mother lay coughing her life away. Eli's fingers froze. The man's eyelids fluttered. For the first time, he lifted his gaze. Not at Eli. Not at the crowd. At the horizon. Where the sun bled orange into the desert. And in that gaze, hollow, quiet, endless, Eli saw the same look his father had given him the night he walked away. "Forgive me." The wind picked up again. Dust spiraled in lazy circles around the gallows. Somewhere, a child cried. And far off, beyond the ridge, a lone coyote began to howl. Not in hunger. In mourning. 10 years earlier, in a frozen Kansas homestead, a starving boy watched his father trade his rifle for a single loaf of bread. The sheriff's posse was coming. The crops were gone. The bank had taken the land. That night, the father whispered a promise, "I'll make it right." He walked out into the snow, boots crunching, leaving behind only a half-eaten crust and a child's tear-stained prayer. 3 days later, the sheriff arrived with a gun in his belt and a story in his mouth. "Found your pa near the church ruins," he said. He'd been seen stealing food. Took a loaf. Tried to run. Eli didn't cry. He just asked, "Did he say anything?" The sheriff hesitated. Then, quiet as a grave, said he was sorry. Said he did it for you. Eli went to the church that night. Broke the lock with a rock. Stood in the pews, alone, under moonlight bleeding through broken stained glass. And there, tucked beneath the altar, half buried in ash, he found it. A piece of bread. Still wrapped in linen. Same pattern. Same frayed edge. And pressed inside, a single silver dollar. With a name scratched into the metal. E.H. His initials. His father's handwriting. He didn't eat it. He couldn't. Instead, he buried it. Under the oak tree behind the house. And swore he'd never be hungry again. Not if it meant becoming what his father became. The crowd didn't cheer. They held their breath. That was worse. In Dry Hollow, justice wasn't a spectacle, it was a burden. A slow, heavy thing passed from hand to hand like a dying child's blanket. Men wiped their palms on their trousers. Women clutched children close, eyes darting away from the gallows. Even the dogs had stopped barking. Eli stood behind the prisoner. The rope was looped. The trapdoor ready. The sheriff nodded once, a gesture as final as a tomb ceiling. But Eli didn't move. He couldn't. His fingers curled around the noose, knuckles white, but his body wouldn't obey. His mind was still in that saloon back room, the scent of charcoal and wool, the echo of a hymn he hadn't heard since he was 9. He could still see his father's face, not as the bandit they called Red Rock Joe, but as the man who sang off-key by candlelight, who taught him how to load a revolver without flinching, who whispered, "A man's worth isn't in his gold, it's in what he refuses to become." And now? Now he was about to kill him. For a reward. For glory. For a name he'd carved into his soul, Bounty Hunter. The wind died. Not a whisper. Not a rustle. Not even the creak of the gallows. The entire town went silent. Even the flies stopped buzzing. A child whimpered, soft, scared, and her mother pulled her into her dress, pressing a hand over her mouth. Eli's throat burned. His chest cracked open. He wanted to scream. To fall to his knees. To shout, "I know who you are." But he couldn't. Because if he did, if he spoke the truth, then this whole charade would collapse. The church robbery. The stolen money. The preacher's Bible. All lies. Or half-truths. Because the truth was worse. His father didn't rob the church. He burned it down. To save the orphans hiding inside. Men from the railroad company, men who'd killed Eli's mother when she tried to protect them, came looking for the children. Found them in the church basement. Hid them there until the preacher turned blind. So his father set fire to the roof. Let the smoke hide their escape. Let the flames consume the evidence. Then walked out, covered in ash, and let the world believe he stole from God. So the children could live. So Eli wouldn't grow up knowing his father was a murderer. So Eli could become something better. Something clean. Something safe. And now? Now Eli was about to kill him. The sheriff stepped forward. Hand on his revolver. "You don't have to do this alone," he murmured. Eli closed his eyes. Breathed in the smoke. The ash. The ghost of pipe tobacco. And whispered, just once, so low even the wind missed it, "I'm sorry." Then he stepped back. Let go of the rope. Let the silence stretch. Let the weight of every choice settle on his shoulders like a shroud. The sheriff frowned. Then sighed. And took one step forward. Reached out. To pull the lever. To drop the trap. To end it. Eli didn't stop him. He couldn't. He just turned. Walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Until the floorboards groaned beneath the weight of falling wood. And the rope snapped taut. And the world went still. Again. The Bible was still warm. Not from fire. Not from sunlight. From blood. Eli found it tucked beneath the preacher's desk in the ruins of the church, charred beams overhead, ceiling collapsed like a broken ribcage, the altar reduced to ash and splintered wood. The wind howled through the holes where stained glass once sang color into the dust. He didn't come here for answers. Came because he couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't breathe without smelling rope and smoke and the faintest trace of cloves. He knelt. Fingers trembling. Pulled the book free from beneath a fallen beam. Leather cracked. Pages yellowed. Water stained. But the cover, embossed with gold leaf that had long since flaked away, still bore the words, Holy Scripture. Given to the faithful by grace mercy. He opened it. And there, between the pages of Matthew and Mark, something folded small. Not paper. Not prayer. A letter. Torn at the edges. Stained dark along the folds. Blood. His father's blood. He didn't cry when he unfolded it. Didn't shake. Didn't speak. He just read. And each word carved deeper than any bullet ever could. Eli, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you found me. Not as the outlaw they call Red Rock Joe, but as the man who loved you enough to become a monster. You think I stole from the church? That I took their money? That I burned it for greed? No. I burned it to save them. The children hiding in the basement, 7 of them, orphaned by the railroad men who came through last winter. They killed your mother when she tried to shield one of them. She didn't even scream. Just held the girl close until the gun went off. The preacher knew. He let them stay. But the sheriff? He was one of them. Paid off. Wore the same badge as the men who took your ma. When they came back, 3 days after your birthday, they brought torches. Said they'd burn the church down with the vermin inside. I walked in before they did. Took the offering box. Poured whiskey over the pews. Lit the match myself. Let the flames rise while I carried the children out through the cellar tunnel. One by one. Barefoot in the snow. I didn't run. I stayed. Let them catch me. Let them call me thief. Let them hang me. Because if they believed I robbed God, then they wouldn't believe I saved his children. And if they didn't believe that, they'd never come looking for the ones who got away. I buried the silver dollar under the oak tree. For you. I left the bread for the widow. So she'd know someone still cared. And I wore these boots, the ones you remember, so if you ever saw me again, you'd know it was me. I'm sorry I wasn't there to tuck you in. I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye. I'm sorry I became what you feared. But I would do it all again. Even if it meant you'd hate me. Even if it meant you'd kill me. I love you, son. Dad. Eli dropped to his knees. The Bible slipped from his fingers. Landed face down in the ash. He didn't move. Didn't sob. Didn't pray. Just sat there, hands shaking, breath shallow, staring at the ink smudged by tears he hadn't shed yet. Outside, thunder rumbled. Not from the sky. From memory. He remembered his father's voice that night. A man's worth isn't in his gold, it's in what he refuses to become. His father refused to be a killer. So he became one. Refused to be a thief. So he stole. Refused to let his son grow up knowing the world was cruel. So he made himself the cruelty. Eli reached into his coat. Felt the cold metal of his revolver. The one he'd carried for 6 months. The one he'd used to bring down 5 men. The one he'd aimed at his father's chest before he ever knew who he was. He pulled it out. Stared at the barrel. Then slowly, he lifted it to his own temple. The weight of it felt right. Like coming home. A clean end. No more running. No more lies. No more being the hunter who forgot he was also the hunted. He closed his eyes. Breathed in the smoke. The ash. The ghost of pipe tobacco. And whispered, I forgive you. The hammer clicked back. One twitch. One pulse. One heartbeat. And then, a sound. From behind him. A child's voice. Soft. Frightened. Mister. Eli froze. Didn't turn. Didn't lower the gun. But he heard footsteps. Small. Barefoot. On broken floorboards. Then, silence. Then, a hand. Tiny. Warm. Placed gently on his shoulder. He turned. There, in the ruin of the church, covered in dirt, hair tangled, eyes wide with hunger and wonder, stood a girl. No older than 8. Wearing a dress too big. Carrying a sack of bread. And in her arms, a Bible. Identical to the one in his hands. She looked at him. Then at the gun. Then back. You're the man who caught him, she said. Eli swallowed. Who are you? She didn't answer right away. Just nodded toward the ashes. He told us, you'd come. Then she stepped forward. Put the Bible into his lap. And whispered, my name is Sarah. And he gave me this, to give to you. Eli stared at the book. At the bloodstain. At the words written in charcoal beside the signature, if you see this girl, tell her I'm proud. He looked up. Tears finally broke. Hot. Unstoppable. He reached out. Held her. Held the Bible. Held the truth. And for the first time since the noose snapped tight. He wept. Not for revenge. Not for justice. But for love. That refused to die. Even in the dark. The gallows stood empty at dawn. No body. No rope. Just a single boot, cracked leather, worn sole, stitched with twine, lying in the dust beneath the oak where Eli's father had once buried the silver dollar. The town woke to whispers. Some said the outlaw escaped. That he slipped the noose like smoke through fingers. Others swore the hunter shot him clean through the heart, that Eli had turned his gun on the crowd and vanished into the Badlands. A few old women muttered about spirits, that Red Rock Joe was never a man at all, but a ghost sent to test the hearts of those who claimed to serve justice. Eli wasn't there to answer them. He rode out before sunrise. Alone. No bounty. No badge. No name. Just a saddlebag heavy with flour, dried meat, and 2 Bibles, one for Sarah, one for the road. Sarah walked beside him now. Not as a child seeking shelter, but as a daughter who'd lost her father twice, once to fire, once to silence. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't need to. She knew. They rode past Dry Hollow's broken gate. Past the saloon where men still drank to forget. Past the church ruins where the wind still sang through broken glass. And when they reached the ridge, the same one where his father had stood that last night, Eli stopped. Turned. Looked back. The town was small. Dusty. Forgotten. Like so many others. He pulled the silver dollar from his pocket. The one his father had left under the oak. He held it between thumb and forefinger. Let the morning light catch its edge. Then he dropped it. Watched it tumble, spinning, until it vanished into the dirt. Not buried. Not hidden. Just, given back. To the earth. To the wind. To the silence. Sarah didn't speak. She just took his hand. Squeezed. And together, they kept riding. 3 weeks later, a rider passed through the ghost town of Cedar Bend. Worn hat pulled low. Boots caked in red clay. No coat. No pistol visible. Just a satchel slung over one shoulder, and a Bible tucked inside. He dismounted at the widow's porch. Set down a sack of flour. A jar of honey. 2 loaves of bread, wrapped in linen, slightly charred at the edges. Then he left. Didn't knock. Didn't wait. Didn't look back. The widow stepped outside. Stared at the offering. Touched the bread. Felt the weight of the cloth. And underneath, pressed into the crust, a single silver dollar. She looked up. Down the road. Where dust still curled behind disappearing hoofprints. And for the first time in 10 years. She wept. Not for loss. But for grace. That same evening, a boy in a dusty schoolhouse in New Mexico traced letters in his primer. His teacher asked, "What's your daddy's name?" The boy paused. Looked out the window. At the setting sun. At the long road stretching west. Then he whispered, "I don't know." "But you must have one," the teacher insisted. The boy smiled, small, quiet, knowing. "He gave me something better than a name." He opened his palm. Revealed a silver dollar. Carved with 2 initials. JH, and he gave me this. Then he closed his hand. And hummed. Off key. Just like the man who taught him. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Weeks turned to months. Winter came. Snow fell thick across the plains. A lone rider passed through the abandoned mining town of Blackrock. Left no trace. Except for a fresh grave. No marker. No stone. Just a patch of earth, trampled flat. And beside it, a new pair of boots. Blackened at the toes. Laces knotted twice. Scuff on the right heel. And tucked inside, a folded note. Written in charcoal. "If you find these, tell the world I didn't die in the dust. I died in the silence. And I'm still walking. JH." The next spring, a woman traveling with her children found the boots. She didn't take them. Just sat beside the grave for an hour. Sang a hymn. Then left a loaf of bread. Wrapped in linen. And walked away. By summer, the story had changed again. Some said the bounty hunter killed himself. Others said he became a preacher. One old man in Tucson swore he saw a man with a scar under his ear riding alone through the Apache Pass, not hunting men. Not collecting bounties. Just, walking. With a girl by his side. And a Bible in his saddlebag. And if you listened close enough, if you stood still beneath a starlit sky, you could hear it. A whisper. On the wind. Not a voice. Not a cry. Just a hum. Faint. Familiar. Off-key. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, and sometimes, if you were lucky, you'd find a silver dollar. Buried under an oak. Or tucked into the flap of a stranger's coat. Or resting on your doorstep. With no name. No signature. Just a note. Scrawled in charcoal. Always the same, I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you needed. But I hope I was the one you deserved. The wind doesn't carry names. It carries stories. And sometimes, just sometimes, it carries love. So quiet. So patient. So stubborn. It doesn't need a monument. Doesn't need a headline. Doesn't need a grave. It just walks. Through dust. Through snow. Through silence. And when you're ready, when your heart is raw enough to listen, it finds you. In the smell of pipe tobacco. In the crunch of boots on gravel. In the last bite of bread. In the hymn you forgot you remembered. And then, quietly, it says, I'm here.